Nipsey Hussle's daughter is out here hanging with Bloods. And the internet has been going absolutely crazy ever since the footage and the photos started making their rounds. But before you form an opinion, before you go to the comments with a hot take, I need you to sit with this whole story, because this is not what most people are framing it as. See, what nobody is talking about, and what we are going to break all the way down today, is the fact that this young girl is literally following in her father's footsteps. And the man who has been right there beside her through all of it, the man who has been holding her down since the day Nipsey was taken from this world, is Black Sam. And his reaction to all of this, it tells you everything you need to know about where Imani's head is at and where this whole situation is actually going. The shocking truth behind what is really happening with Nipsey Hussle's daughter goes so much deeper than a photo or a clip making the rounds on social media. We are about to reveal all of it. So stay locked in, because this one is going to hit your soul before it is over. Let's get into it. Now, before we get into the full breakdown, let me keep it 100 with y'all. There has been a lot of noise circulating online about Imani's Gatum, Nipsey Hussle's daughter, and the company she has been keeping. A lot of people have been reacting fast, reacting emotionally, without the full context of who this young woman is, where she comes from, and what she has been through to get to where she is right now. We are about to separate the facts from the fiction, the real from the fake. And to do that properly, we have to go back. We have to talk about who Nipsey was as a father, what he was trying to build in his daughter before he was taken, and what the landscape looked like for Imani after one of the most devastating losses a child can ever experience. Because here is the reality that gets lost in all the social media noise. Imani as Gatum is not just a celebrity's kid living off her father's legacy passively. She is a young woman who was raised with intention, raised with purpose, raised by a man who understood that the environment she grew up in was going to pull at her from every direction. And Nipsey made sure, for as long as he was here, that she had the foundation to handle that pull. But here is where it gets real. The question everybody should actually be asking is not why is she hanging with Bloods? The question is, who has been guiding her since her father's been gone? And the answer to that question is what makes this whole story mean something entirely different than what the headlines want you to think. Let's set the full scene, fam, because the context here is everything. Ermias Joseph Asghedom, the world knew him as Nipsey Hussle, was not just a rapper from Slauson and Crenshaw. He was a man who came from the streets of Los Angeles, who was deeply embedded in the culture of those streets, and who made a conscious and deliberate decision to use everything those streets taught him to build something that could outlast him. A marathon, not a sprint, a generational project. And his daughter Imani was central to that project from day one. This was not a man who separated his family from his mission. Nipsey wove them together. He understood that the greatest thing he could build was not a clothing store, not a record label, not a real estate portfolio. The greatest thing he could build was the people around him, his community, his children. Imani is Nipsey's daughter from a previous relationship. She grew up watching her father navigate a world that most people only rap about. The tension between the streets and the boardroom, between the legacy of gang culture and the responsibility of community leadership. And Nipsey never tried to shield her from that reality by pretending it did not exist. Instead, he tried to arm her with the tools to understand it, process it, and rise above it. That approach, that parenting philosophy, is what makes everything happening right now so layered. Because Nipsey did not raise his daughter to be sheltered. He raised her to be a leader. And what does a leader look like when they grow up in Los Angeles? In the shadow of a father who was rolling 60s, in a community where the Bloods and the Crips are not just gang affiliations, but family trees, neighborhood histories, and lived realities for the people around her? That is the question. And to answer it, we have to talk about what Nipsey was actually doing when he was walking his daughter to school every single morning. Real talk, there's an interview that does not get referenced enough when people talk about Nipsey Hussle as a father. And it is one of the most powerful things he ever said publicly, because it gives you a direct window into how intentional this man was about raising Imani. Nipsey talked about his morning routine with his daughter. Every day, walking her to school, he would use that time as a teaching moment, not in a heavy-handed way, but in a consistent, repetitive, deliberate way that anybody who understands how the mind actually builds its foundation knows is the most effective form of education there is. Repetition with intention. He would ask her questions during that walk. Simple questions, direct questions. Questions like, "What does integrity mean?" And she would have to answer. He would have her repeat affirmations out loud. Phrases like, "I am a leader." Statements that seem simple on the surface but carry enormous weight when a child hears them from their parent every single day, internalizes them, builds their self-image around them before the world gets a chance to define them first. Let that sink in for a minute. This is a man from Crenshaw, a man who came up in one of the most intense gang environments in the history of Los Angeles, who was walking his daughter to school every morning, asking her to define integrity, asking her to affirm her own leadership out loud, building her from the inside out so that no external pressure, not peer pressure, not street pressure, not the weight of the neighborhood's expectations, could ever override the foundation he laid. That is not hood parenting. That is not celebrity parenting. That is conscious, intentional, deeply loving parenting from a man who understood that the world his daughter was inheriting was going to require her to be stronger than most people will ever have to be. He wanted her to know who she was before the world told her who it thought she should be. He wanted her vocabulary to include integrity, leadership, purpose, not as abstract concepts she read about in school, but as lived realities she could reach for when things got hard. And they were going to get hard. Nipsey knew that. He just did not know how soon. But here is where the story takes the turn that changes everything. March 31st, 2019. That is the date that shattered the world for Imani Asghedom. Her father, the man who walked her to school every morning, the man who asked her what integrity meant before the day even started, the man who held her identity together with every single conversation they had, was murdered outside his own store on Slauson Avenue. She was 10 years old. 10 years old, fam. Let that sit for a second. The age when most kids are worried about what they are going to wear to school, what game they are going to play at recess, what their parents are making for dinner. Imani Asghedom lost her father at 10 years old, and not in a quiet, private way. She lost him publicly, violently, in a moment that became national news, that generated grief across the entire world, that put a spotlight on her family's pain that has never fully gone away. The question that comes after a loss like that, especially a loss of that magnitude for a child that age, is always the same. What was she left with? What did Nipsey build around her that could hold her together when the man himself was no longer there to do it? And the answer to that question has two parts. The first part is what she was left with materially and in terms of legacy. The second part, and honestly the more important part, is who stepped up to be there for her in the flesh, in real life, in the day-to-day way that a grieving child needs someone to show up. On the legacy side, Nipsey left Imani as part of an estate that has continued to generate significant wealth since his passing. His music catalog, his business interests, his marathon brand, all of it has continued to grow in value and generate income. His estate has been managed in a way that ensures his children are provided for on a financial level that most people will never experience. She is not wanting for anything materially. Nipsey made sure of that. But money does not walk you to school. Money does not ask you what integrity means on a Tuesday morning. Money does not sit with you when the grief hits at 2 a.m. and the absence of your father feels like a physical weight on your chest. For that, Imani needed people, real people, present people. And that is where Black Sam enters the story in the most significant way. Now let's talk about Black Sam, because this is the piece of this story that not enough people fully understand. And without it, everything else we are discussing today is missing its most important context. Black Sam, whose full name is Samuel Asghedom, is Nipsey Hussle's older brother. And when Nipsey was killed, Black Sam did not just grieve. He stepped up, fully, completely, without hesitation. He made a commitment that went beyond the normal boundaries of what most people think of when they hear the word uncle. He took on the role of a father figure for Imani in a way that has been consistent, deliberate, and deeply intentional from the day Nipsey was buried. Now, in the hood, we know that this kind of thing is not uncommon in a cultural sense. When a father falls, the men around him are expected to step up and hold things together for the children left behind. That is a real code that exists in communities like the one Nipsey came from. But what Black Sam has done for Imani goes well beyond cultural obligation. This is personal. This is a man who understood his brother's vision for this child and made a decision to carry that vision forward as faithfully as he possibly could. Black Sam is not playing the role of the cool uncle who shows up on birthdays and holidays. He is present in the way that Nipsey was present. He is showing up in the daily, unglamorous, consistent way that real parenting requires. He is making sure that the foundation Nipsey laid, those morning walks, those affirmations, that vocabulary of integrity and leadership, does not crumble just because the man who built it is no longer physically here. The streets have been talking about how deep Black Sam's commitment to Imani actually runs. People close to the family have spoken about how he has essentially folded her into his life the way you fold a child into a family. Not as a project, not as an obligation, but as someone you genuinely love and genuinely fight for. He attends her events. He is present for her milestones. He makes sure she is surrounded by people who knew her father, who understand her father's legacy, and who are invested in seeing her become the leader Nipsey always told her she was. For those who might not fully understand the significance of what Black Sam is doing, let me break it down. In communities like Crenshaw, in families with the history and the depth that the Askeedum family carries, there is an understanding that children belong to more than just their immediate parents. They belong to the extended family, to the community, to the people who share the bloodline and the history. Black Sam, operating the way he has been operating for Imani, is the highest expression of that understanding. He is honoring his brother by taking care of what his brother loved most. But here is where it gets real spicy, fam, because now we have to talk about the reaction. Black Sam's reaction to Imani hanging with Bloods, and what that reaction actually reveals about where this whole situation stands. When the footage and photos of Imani with Bloods started circulating, the internet did what the internet always does. People formed opinions instantly. Some people came with concern, some came with criticism, some came with straight up judgment about what it means that Nipsey Hussle's daughter is in these kinds of environments, in these kinds of circles. But Black Sam's reaction was not panic. It was not public condemnation. And it definitely was not the reaction of a guardian who feels like something is going wrong or off the rails. His reaction, and the way people close to the family have described it, was measured, knowing, almost like a man who understands the full picture and is not the least bit rattled by what the internet is choosing to make a story out of. And that measured response tells you something crucial about the context that most people online are completely missing. See, the real tea that got everybody shook is this. Nipsey Hussle himself was deeply, openly, unapologetically connected to gang culture for his entire life. He never pretended otherwise. He never disavowed it. He talked about it in his music, he wore it in his identity, and he simultaneously used his position within that culture to try to broker peace and create opportunities for people who were trapped in cycles of violence and poverty. He was a rolling 60s Crip who was actively trying to unite Bloods and Crips because he understood that the division between those two communities was destroying the same neighborhood he loved. So when you understand that, when you understand who Nipsey actually was and what he was actually trying to build, Imani being around Bloods does not look like a red flag. It looks like a reflection. It looks like a young woman who absorbed her father's understanding that people are more than their affiliations, that unity is more powerful than division, that the mission her father dedicated his life to was bigger than any set or any color. Black Sam understands this because he lived it alongside Nipsey. He was there for the conversations, the relationships, the work. He knows that Imani moving through those spaces is not a betrayal of her father's legacy. It is an extension of it. And his calm, grounded reaction to the whole situation is the reaction of a man who has been preparing her for exactly this kind of moment. Now let's talk about what Black Sam actually does for Imani on a day-to-day basis, because this is the part of the story that deserves real recognition and real respect. Being a guardian for someone else's child, especially a child who lost their parent the way Imani lost Nipsey, is not a simple thing. It requires a specific kind of emotional intelligence, a specific kind of patience, and a specific kind of love that does not come from obligation. It comes from a place much deeper than that. Black Sam has been present for Imani's education, making sure she is in environments where she can grow intellectually and develop the kind of critical thinking that Nipsey always pushed. He has been present for her social development, making sure she has relationships and friendships that are healthy, that are grounded, that are connected to real community rather than just to the superficial world that celebrity status can sometimes trap young people in. He has kept her connected to her father's legacy in a way that honors Nipsey without putting an impossible burden on Imani's shoulders. Because here's the thing about being Nipsey Hussle's daughter. The weight of that legacy is enormous. The expectations that come with that name, the projections that people put on her, the way the world watches every single thing she does and filters it through the lens of who her father was. That is a heavy thing for any young person to carry. And Black Sam has been the buffer between that weight and Imani's ability to just be a young woman figuring herself out. He has also made sure that Imani understands the full depth of who her father was. Not just the legend, not just the martyr, not just the icon that the internet has constructed, but the real man. The man who asked her what integrity meant every morning. The man who had flaws and made mistakes and also had a vision so clear and so powerful that it outlived him. Black Sam carries that knowledge and he transfers it to Imani in the way only someone who actually knew Nipsey, not as a fan, not as a follower, but as a brother, can do. Real talk, what Black Sam is doing for this young woman is something that does not get celebrated enough. Everybody talks about Nipsey's legacy in terms of his music, his business, his community work. But one of the most living, breathing expressions of that legacy is the fact that his daughter has someone like Black Sam in her corner. Someone who carries the same blood, the same roots, the same understanding of what the marathon actually means, and who is committed to making sure she runs it the right way. Let me break it down for y'all one more time, because I want to make sure we are connecting all the dots here before we get to the final analysis. Nipsey raised Imani with a specific intention. Every morning walk to school was a classroom. Every repeated affirmation was a brick in a foundation. Every conversation about integrity, about leadership, about what it means to carry yourself with purpose, all of it was Nipsey building something in his daughter that he knew the world would eventually try to tear down. Then he was taken, suddenly, violently, publicly, and a 10-year-old girl was left to navigate the aftermath of one of the most high-profile murders in Los Angeles history, while simultaneously trying to just grow up. Black Sam stepped into that gap. Not perfectly, nobody is claiming that. Grief does not have a perfect response, and no human being can fully replace what Imani lost when she lost Nipsey. But Black Sam stepped in with intention, with love, with the same marathon mindset that defined his brother's entire approach to life. He has been there, consistently, in the way that counts. And now Imani is older. She is moving through the world with her own agency, her own decisions, her own relationships. She is spending time in environments that connect her to the culture her father came from, the community her father loved, the people her father was trying to bring together. And Black Sam is watching, not with alarm, not with panic, with the knowing calm of a man who trusts the foundation that was laid and trusts the young woman that foundation produced. Now, here is the analysis that I think is the most important piece of this whole conversation, fam. And this is the part that I want y'all to sit with long after this video is over. There is a version of this story that is easy to tell. Young girl loses famous father, gets raised in that same environment, ends up hanging with the same people her father was affiliated with, and the cycle continues. That is the easy, surface level read. That is the hot take. That is the version that generates clicks and comments and outrage. But that version is not the truth. The truth is more complicated, more layered, and honestly more beautiful than that. The truth is that Imani Asghedom is the product of intentional parenting by a man who understood exactly what world he was bringing her into and made sure she had the tools to navigate it on her own terms. The truth is that she has had Black Sam by her side, carrying the torch of that intention, reinforcing that foundation, keeping her connected to the real legacy of who her father was. And the truth is that a young Black woman from Crenshaw who understands her community, who moves through it without fear, who has relationships across different affiliations because she grew up watching her father believe that unity was possible. That is not a cautionary tale. That is exactly what Nipsey Hussle was trying to produce. That is the marathon continuing. The real question this story raises is not whether Imani should be hanging with Bloods. The real question is whether the people watching from the outside are willing to expand their understanding of what it looks like when a child actually inherits their parents' vision. Because it does not always look like a press release. Sometimes it looks like a young woman moving through her father's world with her father's heart. And if you understand who Nipsey was, you understand that it's not something to be afraid of, that it's something to be proud of. At the end of the day, fam, Imani Asghedom's story is not about Bloods or Crips or affiliations or what the internet decides to make a viral moment out of. It is about a daughter carrying her father's legacy in the most authentic way she knows how. It is about a community that lost one of its greatest leaders and has been trying to honor him ever since. It is about Black Sam showing up every single day for a young woman who needed someone to show up, and doing it with the kind of quiet dedication that does not make headlines but absolutely shapes a life. Nipsey used to say that the marathon continues. He said it so often it became a motto, a movement, a mantra for an entire community. And when you look at Imani, when you look at who she is becoming, who she is choosing to be around, how she is moving through a world that took her father too soon, you see the marathon continuing in one of its most personal and most powerful forms. Black Sam reacting with calm to all the noise online, that is a man who knows the full story. That is a man who has been doing the work. That is a man who looked at his niece and saw his brother's vision still alive and still growing, and decided that his job is not to protect her from the world Nipsey came from. His job is to make sure she is ready for it. Mission accomplished. Real talk. What are your thoughts on Imani's journey and the role Black Sam has been playing in her life? Drop it in the comments because I genuinely want to hear how y'all are processing this one. And click on the video on screen right now for more stories that go deeper than the headlines and give you the full picture the way it deserves to be told.